Welcome back to the channel. This is another video in my Storyteller's Guide to Mind's Eye Theatre, sharing some of my experiences both as a player and a storyteller over the years, because I honestly think we could end up in a renaissance of live action games, and yeah, knowledge is good, knowledge is king. So I've entitled this Radical Ideas for a Better Game, and my thoughts on this video is about letting you know, the storyteller, that you can set up and structure your game in such a way you can make some decisions, which means that you will have a better game overall. And some of this, it's radical because it removes a bit of player choice. Okay? And you're always going to get your players who have their favourite thing in the World of Darkness, favourite clan, and they want to do it. And sometimes you might need to say no, okay? But say no for a reason, for a purpose. And this is going to share some ideas I've had over the years about ways you can make a tighter, better, stronger game and change things up a bit. So first up, one of the things that got me thinking about this was there's some great lectures online from John Wick's, not the Keanu Reeves character. John Wick's a role-playing game writer. I think he wrote some Mind's Eye Theatre supplements for Hunter. He's talking about his experiences of Vampire and how games could become static. When he came away from that, he wrote Houses of the Blooded and how he did some things to make that more interesting. So, for example, in Vampire, often players are all secret about their information, when actually we're telling collaborative stories which are entertaining for you, for me, for everybody. So the more stuff you don't see going on, it could be really cool, but if nobody sees it, how cool can it, it doesn't create that awesome thing that it could be. So he talks about, if you're going off for a secret chat, let people know and come along and listen to it, and there's some mechanics in there for players who do that, who really share their kind of secrets and plans and get shared information, get rewarded XP, and thinking about putting things front and center for people to engage with rather than hoarding it away. Now, a key part of that is character death, and me and Gavin Graith ran our Game of Thrones live action game, and we decided to run it in pubs, a bit like the Vampire LARPs that we used to do. Dark Ages was successful with costuming and stuff, so we kind of continued that. Rather than go out into sort of a field and do a field LARP at the weekend, we kept it on an evening so it was accessible in the city centre again, so it's accessible so people could do it. And one of the things we did in that was you could pay XP to cheat a character death, just like Game of Thrones. Is that character really dead or is it not? But when you change that to Vampire, it starts to become really interesting, that you can afford to have those influence battles and status battles and embarrass each other in court and stuff without fear of Billy Big Balls Brewhouse smashing your head in with potence and killing you. Because you want that drama, in-game drama, to be front and centre. And sometimes I think there are those uber combat characters that just dominate everything through their sheer raw killing potential, when actually vampire society is a lot more subtle than that, and a lot more games going on with each other, interactions and politicking and stuff. So so think about that. Now, there might be times when there's an egregious reason why a character must die, supposing they've been found guilty of practicing infernalism, for example, in which a public death is a public death. But there's nothing worse than, as a player, having your characters killed for reasons often that might not directly involve you. One of the things that as a player, I've killed characters, and the few times I've killed characters still stick with me more than most other things. So it never really felt right for us. So at one point there was a Malkavian, played in Camarilla UK, so linked games around the country. It was when Demontation were coming back as in the clan, and I kind of led a faction of the clan which maintained Dominate. the Dementation clan were a bit kooky, a bit fishmalk, and we wanted us to kind of say, look, no, we're not going to tolerate this. We are Clan Malkavian. We aren't fishmalks. And I made the decision to kill the clan head's kind of second in command, to send a political message to the clan, and it was my ultimatum. I was like, killed him. I'm going to start killing all your favourite Malkavians until you relinquish your control and acquiesce to our demands. So very vampiric power play. Felt, in terms of story and impact and stuff, it felt good and interesting at the time, but I also felt sorry for the player whose character I killed. And you always take that out of character grudge and grievance with you as well. So what if there was a way where he could have brought that character back in maybe a different way, so that he kept his character if he wanted to continue playing it and the grudge and stuff. But if no character can really truly die, then violence as a last resort isn't a last resort, and violence becomes more of a way to progress stories and stuff as well. Like I say, something I felt really helped our Game of Thrones game, and I think we could take it in a vampire. Maybe you can't die, you get put into torpor. Ultraviolet, get turned into a pile of ash, and you can be resurrected as a potential option. Nothing has to be final. So yeah, characters cheating death, I think could encourage a more dynamic play. Second, well, free influencers. I've done a few videos talking about downtimes and influencers, and again, this comes down to where you spend your dots on your character sheet. If I spend all my dots on a discipline, I'm not going to lose that discipline. It's really bad then if I spend my dots on a retainer, an ally, or an influence, and something happens in that dynamic game of to and throw, and I lose that influence for a while or whatever, because an influence is never as powerful as a discipline as well. So to encourage a dynamic interplay of influences and downtime, conflict and stuff, feel free to give out free influences. And if you give out free influences, you can gain and lose it. Boom, 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 and it becomes a swinging ground. You can pump XP into it if you want, but yeah, create a dynamic influence thing where it's okay to, again, push yourself to go out and kill that key person, that influence and the effects, and deal with it, because you're not taking that resource, the out-game resource, which is XP, which is an artificial thing to chart character growth, which means that Gertie Gangrel, who's spent it all on disciplines and goes out and does everything themselves, doesn't rely on influence. The game should be about influence, and influence is a subtle knife. Think about limiting the clans. So I'm not just talking about keeping it to the core 7 Camarilla clans. Limiting the clans means that a much smaller player base gets more internal factions. So imagine you've got a game of 14 players. I'm thinking Camarilla 7 clans. You've got a game of 14 players. Each one's a member of each clan. So each clan's got 2 people. You might have a bit of politicking in those clans, but you're missing a bit of the internal clan politics before you get between each other. It's worth saying right now that yes, I know in tabletop, Primogen aren't clan heads, separate rules, but in live action, you do tend to get a bit more stratification of the clans. Most cities would have a clan head as a Primogen. I quite like that actually with live action. So if you've got 14 players, but you've only got 5 clans in that city, then straight away, some of those clans are going to have 3-4 members, and that then starts to really have some internal clan politics, as well as the in-game politics. But the other thing you can do by limiting clans is, for example, if you didn't have the Tremere in your city, you only had Tremere as an NPC. They don't have to be the bad villain NPC. Often NPCs are just there as villains. You could have them there as the font of all occult knowledge that your PCs could go to and create a real barter boon currency when they need to interact with occultness. Same with the Nosferatu. I love Nosferatu, love playing Nosferatu. But if your Nosferatu were all NPCs, then that is the ultimate way to go and buy rumours, and and that can really add to a game. The Toreador having to go to Nosferatu to get some rumours that they know they're going to have. Fair enough, your players could do it, but I've never felt that players really got the real espionage rumour gathering of the Nosferatu down pat enough for it to be really feel effective. But if you knew you were going to Nosferatu and you were going to get good information because it was an NPC, then that would really enhance that part of the boon system and information gathering. With that as well, maybe have an NPC harpy. I know players want to fill as many PC positions as possible. Now, if we go back to that thing about character death and interacting with each other and more dynamic play, the fear is, as a PC harpy, that they can't be as savage enough. They cannot be condemning. So the harpy should be judging the elder as harshly as they should the neonate. In fact, it should be judging the elder's actions more than the neonate. So the harpy is a key position for keeping characters in check with what they can and can't do. So an NPC harpy you can make strong enough to stand up to the biggest bully boy characters and say what needs said without fear of repercussion, which is, again, keeping the status and standing in the game running and healthy, rather than, you know what, I'm going to wait till you come out of Elysium and then I'm going to beat you up. I'm probably going to kill your character. Nobody wants that to happen. Because of out of game, in game, sometimes do intersect, and your out of character feelings for your characters and stuff you might err more on the caution than you would in game. Some of these characters have been around years. Certainly in the Glasgow Independent games, GV Lab, the characters that's been there for decades. The other thing as well is about keeping characters in their lane. And what do I mean by this? Kindred Society is very structured. Elder, Ancilla, Neonate. And what we do find is players develop their skills and develop their character sheets, and the danger is it becomes superhero with fangs as the elders kind of run around on the streets and do everything. So what we need to do is encourage the elder players to not do everything, to not run around with their Wazzy powers and do stuff, but to get the Ancilla to get the Neonates to do stuff. And again, you might need, this is where stuff like the NPC Harpy comes in. So if Malachi the Malkavian elder is always kind of running around doing stuff, sword fencing the baddies and stuff, the Harpy should be saying, why is Malachi acting like a neonate? I think he should lose status for that. And that status should matter. But that is going to involve you as a storyteller talking to the players as they become those rising in the ranks, as they become elders and Ancilla. And yes, the other thing about elder and Ancilla is it's tied to age in the background, but actually in terms of a game, you could start off with your 12th or 13th gen character, and if you've been around a decade, you've got a load of XP, you're probably at 5 and loads of disciplines and stuff. So actually, you should be acting probably more like an elder and Ancilla. So that's probably one thing you might want to sweep away, is that link between physical, like background age, and real age of characters. And are you telling your players to act a certain way? Yes, but if they've got the power and the impact on the game, they've got a duty to the rest of the game as well. If a plot happens and the same old elders deal with it all the time by jumping in, the other players are going to start getting pissed off that the same people are always doing that. Sometimes it works the opposite way as well. So a great story I was reminded of in the player questionnaires was there was a potential infernal cult happening in the city of Glasgow. In fact, as a storyteller, I'd hyped up the importance of it, and they were just kind of like minor people just dabbling and nothing real occult with it, but they were occult. So the elders were panicking and spent several months talking about themselves in a wee cabal of low-level sort of neonate Malkavians, went in, killed all the cults and left it. And when the elders eventually went and did something, they got there and they were like, oh, they're all dead. Which was really awesome to see, and yeah, I'm glad the players responded to that and did that. That was really cool. But for me as a storyteller, I'm thinking, well, why didn't those elders get the neonates to go out and do it? If you're wanting to play these like hoary old elder vampires, then you've got to accept your role in that place in society, and you should be getting those neonates to go out and do it. Vampire society is based on kind of Roman society, and what would happen in Roman society was the people at the top had their clients who had their clients who had their clients. So what would happen is I'm Peter the wine seller, and another person has opened up a wine bar near where my wine bar is. So I'll go to my patron and say, can you do something about this because it's hitting my business? He can't, so he goes to his patron and goes up to his patron, that goes up to the patron at the top, and he says, well, yeah, actually, I will do this favour for you. So the favours are running up and down the chain, and then he gets people at his level to go and deal with it down and up the way. And that's how vampire society should happen, and you should be moving and shaking with different things at different levels. So yeah, so keeping your players in the same lane. I would even maybe go to far radical ways. If elders maybe can buy disciplines, so if you're going to set your character up as an elder to begin with, your disciplines are cheaper to represent that you actually have age on your side and you will have accumulated those powers. But your ability to do stuff on the streets with allies, with retainers, maybe's influence is trickier because you are so out of touch with the modern world. And bear in mind, the modern world has advanced so much so quickly. Whereas your neonates, they might get a bonus with dealing with all this kind of modern stuff, but obviously their disciplines are harder to deal with. So the elder then has to create a coterie, a cabal, a system of clients of those younger people, the neonates, who are able to go and do these things for them, as opposed to just, I'm Bertie Big Balls Elder, I'm just going to go and do everything. What about the rest of my players? Because you have to take ownership at that point as a storyteller for what impact the people are having on the rest of the game. And you're playing Vampire the Masquerade. If you're playing maybe werewolf, you know, your cairn leader might have to be the person at the front of all the fighting because they've got a reputation to uphold. Everything is different in a vampire game. And that could also lead to another thing that a couple of other people have talked about, is maybe running a neonate game, a lower status game, setting a bar where if you've got status 2 or lower in the city, you're welcome. If you've got more than 2 status, you're not welcome. So actually a lot of those big status people are NPCs and don't impact the game. Or if they do, that's a big thing. The Primogen of the Toreador are coming. What's happening? What's going on? How do we deal with that? The other thing we've thought of is less regular meetups. So the traditional method for running LARP games, certainly in the UK, pub LARPs, is once a month. It's a court setup. What if you did that maybe once every 2 months, once every 3 months, but ran smaller games for different groups of society at different times, and again tie those influences together, so your big meetups suddenly are much more interesting. Werewolf, I think I've been involved in a werewolf game which happened, so once a quarter we would have the moot, the gathering, where your werewolf packs would gather and you would talk about what you'd done in terms of a moot and earn your renown and stuff from your totem spirits. But between those games you would have your wee packs going off with storytellers dealing with things, and at the moots you got your rewards, but you could also coordinate what you were going to do for the rest of the quarter coming up. So I'm going to cut that there. I've got loads more ideas, but they're the strongest ones I wrote down about kind of changing some of the fundamentals. And I'm not saying do this, but have a think about sometimes what your players are doing and maybe the choices that players have got and how that impacts the game feel. Think about what you want out of the game, and don't be afraid to change it up as a storyteller. If you've got a running chronicle, then you want to do some changes. You might need to really think about that. But actually, if you're setting up a chronicle, it's really a good time to think about, just because this book or this book says do X, I might want to do Y instead, and this is because I want it to do a certain thing for us. But anyway, hopefully that's got you thinking. If you've got any thoughts and feelings or questions on anything I've said, put a message, we'll have a chat. If you've got any other crazy radical ideas yourself as well, throw them down. I'd love to hear them. Always love talking about my hobbies. But anyway, you have a great time. I'll catch you later. Bye bye.